What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the real issues behind DC Worlds Collide, and not just the stuff everyone's already complaining about, but also how the recent Warner Brothers buyout may be affecting development, communication, and content. I'll be breaking this down through the lens of psychology and behavior analysis, because when you look at how players respond to these problems, it makes a lot of sense. Let's go ahead and hit that intro and get right into the video. Alright guys, so the first thing I want to go ahead and talk about today is the lack of developer communication. So as we know, communication from the dev team is virtually non-existent. There isn't any consistent messaging, there's no reliable roadmaps, and there's long gaps where the community is just left completely in the dark. From a psychological perspective, this is a breakdown in reinforcement patterns. In live service games, communication acts as a form of positive reinforcement. This is what keeps players hopeful, engaged, and really willing to stick around through slow content periods. But that's the issue, is this game doesn't have periodic slow content periods. Most of the seasons in this game are slow. And that's when you see the dip in the player base. And when communication vanishes, players lose trust. Uncertainty increases, and once that uncertainty hits a certain threshold, people naturally disengage and leave the game. And this is exactly what's happening in DC Worlds Collide. Now, let's talk about something bigger happening behind the scenes. And that is the Warner Brothers buyout, and how this may be affecting everything we're seeing, or really what we're not seeing. That might be the biggest issue, is we're just not being communicated by the developers on what's going on. And they might not be able to say what's going on. But whenever a huge company like Warner Brothers takes over and restructures studios, or there's a buyout that happens, a few things tend to go on. Budgets can get frozen, projects get reorganized, priorities can shift, teams get reshuffled or downsized, and communication becomes restricted while decisions are made. For the devs, that creates what's called a high constraint environment. They might want to communicate more, release more, or be transparent with players, but corporate restructuring usually limits what they're allowed to say publicly. No, I'm not saying this is exactly what's going on, or this is the factor that's, creating what's going on right now and what we're seeing in the game, but it very well could be. And psychologically, when developers themselves feel uncertain, overwhelmed, or restricted, this trickles down to the players as silence. This could explain the lack of content, the slow update cycle, and the sudden drop in transparency. However, we have seen since global launch that there hasn't really been a lot of communication with the developers. There was the few live streams that I go and watch every once in a while just to see if I can pick up something that shows what's going on right now. And I just kind of really enjoyed that they did that back then. And then, Peacemaker hit, and the Poison team hit, and things really did drop. Obito in the Discord stopped asking for feedback, and that happened 2 or 3 times, where he went on Discord and asked for feedback and things of the sort, but nothing's happened since then. Players aren't just dealing with a quiet dev team, they're dealing with a dev team that may not even have clear direction from above right now. They might be scrambling themselves to figure out what's going on. On top of that, the game's marketing is practically non-existent. I know they advertised the game in the movies when the Superman movie came out, and that was pretty cool to see that on screen. And I know I saw that in other theaters and movies as well. I think when I went to see Weapons, it was also advertised. But, guys, this is especially surprising because Warner Brothers is a massive media company with enormous marketing potential. But if the game is in a holding pattern, due to the buyout or restructuring, the market team might not be allowed to push anything big. From a psychological standpoint, marketing creates anticipation. Anticipation drives dopamine, and then the dopamine drives engagement. But if there's no hype for the game, there's no engagement. The game feels invisible, and players feel like the company doesn't really care about them, even if the devs behind the scenes are stuck waiting for corporate approvals. Now, guys, I want to talk about one of the biggest frustrations for me, and that's resource management. So, for my characters to go from level 280 to 300, right now, it costs me 180,000 titanium. And the best pack in the store gives you 150,000 titanium for $100. This is insane. What this does is it creates a punitive progression system where players feel punished unless they spend large amounts of money. That's the opposite of what a healthy game loop should do. Not to mention that $100 for the 150,000 titanium doesn't even cover the full amount to get the character from 280 to 300, and that's one character. So essentially, if you wanted to rake up all 5 of your main characters, the 300, from 280 to 300, you'd be spending, what, $600, $700? That's insane. That should not be the case. And players who feel punished don't stay. That's consistent with everything we know in behavior psychology. And if the Warner Brothers takeover is influencing monetization strategy, that could honestly be part of why resource costs feel so extreme right now. And it very well could not be, because the shop hasn't changed since global launch, so this could also just be speculation. Corporate pressure often leads to aggressive monetization, and we've seen this throughout many other games, even if it wrecks long-term player satisfaction. Now, guys, another major issue is the lack of fresh PvE content. It's been ages since we've seen anything new. The entire game loop right now is basically they release a new character, they hope that keeps people playing for a few more days, week, month, whatever, the entire season, and then it repeats. This is not sustainable long term. And this ties back to 2 things. Corporate restructuring, slowing down because development pipelines, or the psychological burnout from repetitive stale content. Guys, players need novelty. Novelty keeps motivation high, and without it, even the best IPs eventually lose momentum. And DC Worlds Collide is very, very close to that point. So guys, when you put everything together, the developer silence, the corporate restructuring, the buyout, the slow marketing, punishing resource systems, and lack of new content, you get a perfect psychological storm. Players feel ignored, overwhelmed, unrewarded, and uncertain. These conditions that drive disengagement in any behavioral system. And if the Warner Brothers transition is slowing everything down, that only makes the psychological impact of the player base even worse. People want to love this game. It has amazing art, great gameplay, and an iconic DC IP. But none of that matters if the system around it keeps pushing players away. So those are the biggest issues facing DC Worlds Collide right now, and how everything from poor communication to the Warner Brothers buyout is creating this domino effect. As someone with a psychology background, I can tell you this: if they don't break this pattern soon, the player base is going to shrink even faster. So guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Have you noticed the same problems, or is there something else that's pushing you away from the game? Please let me know. I love engaging with you guys. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.